In Lesson 5, we will cover agility, changing speed and direction while running. This lesson is going to be your students' first exposure to some very dynamic activities in this unit. The lesson begins with a brief review of the proper alignment of the upper and lower body segments. Use these photos to give your students a chance to evaluate the upper and lower body alignment of other young people. Lesson 5's Building Skills section will include a few progressions. The first will help your students become more comfortable with linear decelerations. It is important that they maintain proper alignment and stability of the upper and lower body segment during all of these exercises. Encourage your students to use the hip strategy, initiating the deceleration by pushing their hips backwards. This will help them safely absorb the forces associated with decelerating. Depending on their speed, the specific activity, or even the size of the field or court on which they are playing, your students may need to vary the number of steps they use to decelerate. Notice the alignment of this student's inside leg as she moves from one side to the other. That inside leg will end up supporting much of the body's weight and should remain properly aligned to keep the movement safe and efficient. The other leg can be used for balance and to help drive the body in the new direction. No matter the angle of the turn, it is important that your students are comfortable completing the exercise with proper alignment and stability of the entire body. During the subsequent 3 steps of this progression, your students will practice changing direction at 45, 90, and 180 degrees. The first lab will help students get an idea of their body's positioning when decelerating in a straight line. They will mark off an area between 3 and 5 yards wide. Poly spots, cones, or regular household items like plastic cups can be used to mark off the distance. The distance does not need to be exact, so students can even just take 3 to 5 large steps to measure the distance. Partner 1 will begin at one mark and quickly run towards the second mark. They should decelerate as they approach the second mark. They should freeze in place for at least 1 second when they reach the second mark. Partner 1 will have 1 minute to record several attempts. Partner 2 should sketch images of several of Partner 1's attempts from the front and several others from the side. If students have access to phones or tablets with video capabilities, they can also record video during the lab. If students are completing this lab on their own, they should do their best to record themselves completing the lab. This will give students a chance to critique theirs and their partner's body segment alignment and stability during the deceleration. Some students have uploaded their photos to their computers and drawn lines over the photo using an Illustrator program to evaluate their own alignment. This second lab will give students a chance to measure their efficiency when changing direction using a metric called the change of direction deficit. There will be 2 tests during this lab. Both tests require students to run 10 yards. For this lab, you will need to be able to accurately measure the distance for both tests. You will need a tape measure for each group. The first test is a simple 10-yard dash. Students will run 10 yards in a straight line. Be sure to accurately measure out the distance. Each partner should complete this test 3 times and record their scores for each trial. The second test is a 2x5 yard shuttle run. Students will run 5 yards, turn, and run 5 yards in the opposite direction, finishing the test in the same place they started. Each partner should complete this test 3 times and record their scores for each trial. If you don't have access to a tape measure, you can get creative about the test. The only thing that matters is that each leg of the down and back is half the distance of the first test. You can do a full basketball court sprint as test number 1 and a half court down and back for test number 2 if you have access to a basketball court. Feel free to get creative. If students are completing this lab on their own, they should do their best to time themselves by holding a phone or stopwatch in their hand while running the test. Students should rest 1 minute after each trial. Your students will find this table in their workbooks. They should write theirs and their partner's scores for each trial of the 10-yard dash and the 2x5 yard shuttle into the spaces provided. For each test, they should find and circle the median or middle score. The 2x5 yard shuttle will be the slower of the 2 tests. Subtract the 10-yard dash time from the 2x5 yard shuttle to calculate the change of direction deficit. In our sample, notice Jane Doe's change of direction deficit. Remember, for both tests, she ran 10 yards. However, it took her 1.8 seconds longer to run the 2x5 yard shuttle. This represents the time it took her to slow down, change direction, and accelerate in the opposite direction. The lower the change of direction deficit score, the more efficiently your students move. It is important that they don't just try to get a low score though, because they also need to make sure their bodies are in the proper position. Your students that can get low change of direction scores while maintaining the proper positioning of their bodies not only move efficiently, but also safely. During the closure of Lesson 5, your students can share strategies to improve their scores on the peer assessment labs and discuss the importance of changing speed and direction with control of their body.